Ideally, I should be able to meet learners and say, before we even start, even the first class, what do you believe your abilities are? What do you think you can achieve within 6 months, a year, 2 years? And why do you believe these things? Where did this idea come from? Because it's not a blank slate. You don't have no ideas about learning. You do have some ideas. Where do they come from and why do you believe these things? But it's very unbusinesslike. Hi, welcome back. In this video we'll be talking about the effect of high school on language learning. My name's Chris. I teach French at We Communicate. If you're new to this channel, We Communicate is a bilingual school. I'm a native speaker of French and English. I teach both languages and I make your journey into French easier. That's how I would best describe the job I do. I make French easier for speakers of English specifically. Well, let's start, and you can find this article on the website, wecommunicate.com, and I'll be putting the link beneath the video. A teacher, such as myself, never encounters a neutral student in any situation. It just never happens. You never encounter a neutral student with a blank frame of mind. Okay, you're never working with a blank slate as a teacher. There are many forces of influence that shape the future learning. Now, the case of language learning falls victim to many more influences that can be traced back to high school. It would be ideal if a teacher were to address these beliefs and even before the first class formally starts, but that would be perceived as unnecessary as well as unbusinesslike, and I can't quite picture myself asking, and this is the point of this video by the way, is to ask yourself, how much has high school shaped your experience as a learner, and what do you believe, what do you think is achievable regarding languages or other things? Ideally, I should be able to meet learners and say, before we even start, even the first class, what do you believe your abilities are? What do you think you can achieve within 6 months, a year, 2 years? And why do you believe these things? Where did this idea come from? Because it's not a blank slate. You don't have no ideas about learning. You do have some ideas. Where do they come from and why do you believe these things? But it's very unbusinesslike. Because if you did that, students would be, well, first of all, it would be, interestingly, it would be very different from high school, because they would draw the conclusion that you don't quite know what you're doing. And they're thinking, well, why is he asking me what I believe? It sounds all psycho, whatever nonsense. Can't he just teach me? That's what I think it would be. And I think it's also this type of question about what do you believe about learning would be quite different from our academic tradition, because school typically, or university, college, doesn't typically reflect on its own practices. So that there's not that meta discourse on the practice of learning. That's another blog post. I'll be making a video about that. That's another very long topic to talk about. So it would be unbusinesslike. It would be in ordinary language a bit odd if your teacher were to ask you before you even start, what do you think about learning? How do you see yourself as a learner? And what do you think your influences are? So it would be a bit like going to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I think in the minds of many people it would be a bit pushing things too far. If I told you point blank that tomorrow you must attend a language class in the next town, you'd probably picture a parking lot, a square building, a classroom, other students and a teacher. You have a mental picture of what it might look like. The imagination kicks in, and you might even project yourself as a user of that new foreign language. And this happens within a split second. I say, okay, tomorrow I want you to learn German at 10 in the next town. You'll be thinking, okay, German, what's that look like? Okay, I'll be in a class, there'll be other people. 6 months, year, I expect to reach that level in German. Realistically, this is what I believe about my learning possibilities regarding German. And we all do it. So you might have a picture of the results you expect to achieve after the course is over. It's your little vision board as a learner. I think we all have that. We have a little vision board. Whether we're aware of it or not, we have that little vision board. This mental picture you develop of your future success, I think, says something of similar results in the past and about your confidence as a learner. There's a symmetry between your vision board of your future success and your past experience. There's a symmetry here. The less you expect to achieve, the more work the teacher will have to do to make you believe in yourself. I've been in that position, I still am in that position. But the less trust you have in the teacher and their method, the less they'll be able to teach you. And the more high school shapes your view on what learning means, the less too you will perform. If you don't believe in the teacher, if you don't believe in their abilities, it won't work as well. Their role is to make you believe in yourself. And it goes both ways. Because they say the student is only as good as the teacher, but the teacher is only as good as the student, and we don't speak about this enough. But it's very true. It's a little bracket I'm opening, but teaching and coaching in general is a very different profession than many other professions. We don't always think about this, but in most other professions, whether you're a lawyer, a gardener, a builder, anything, you can be as good as you choose because your performance is not dependent on anyone. If you hire a gardener to do work in your garden, they don't need you to be there. They can be as good as they want. I can't be as good as I want. I can make you fly. I can make you learn French in 6 months, in 4 months even. It depends on you. Will you believe in me and will you allow me to do that? That's a different matter altogether. Now we open this conversation about, okay, Chris, you say you can teach me French in 4 months? Ha! And then there's a resistance. Because based on your previous experience, you don't believe that to be true. Because you have been to high school and you do have a lot of years of substance, of experience that you can compare to what I'm saying now. Believe in me, I'm brilliant, I can do it in 4 months, 6 months. Your mind will resist this idea, and this will influence the future results. The more high school shapes your view of what learning means, the definition, the individual definition that you put on what learning means, the less too you will perform, because there is a limitation. The bigger your definition of what learning means, maybe the more results you can achieve. And I mentioned, of course, that the role of the teacher is to make you believe in yourself. Do you know who, I'll tell you what, the best students, the ones who performed the highest in my classes were the ones who believed in me the most. When I said, you need to do this exercise first, this one second, the worst ones, well, worst in the sense of the results they later got, is when they make their own diagnosis. And there is this breed of student who make their own diagnosis. I worked as an English teacher for a French school, and I got back to the management. I said, listen, I don't know how I put it exactly. I said, a lot of your students, most of them are making their own diagnosis. What happened was a lot of these French professionals spoke in English at me, but they were not speaking English, they were speaking French using English words. So typically it was, hello Christopher, how are you? Today we speak English, yesterday I go supermarket, and it was just absolutely dreadful. And you say, I wanted to say, oh, steady on, let's talk about this. First of all, there are syllables. You don't pronounce them all. There's phonetics, right? Syllables, not all of the same volume in English. Short vowels, long vowels, sounds that we don't have in French, or O, all that. We need to practice these, because what you're doing at the moment is speaking French while using English words. There's a big difference. It's not what you think. And they made their own diagnosis saying, oh, what I need is to speak more English. I just need to speak more English. No, you don't. You need to revise the basis of grammar because you don't know. You really don't know. The teacher is meant to liberate you and say, this is how much you can achieve. But these types of learners who made their own diagnosis didn't have any trust in me. It's dreadful, led to absolutely nothing. But if they had trusted me, if they had come saying, listen, Chris, I really don't know. All I know about English learning is what I saw in high school. Obviously it wasn't good. What should I be doing? Tell me. You have to let your teacher liberate you. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's talk now about high school and self-belief. High school has a considerable influence on our self-belief as learners for both subconscious and practical reasons. So the influence of high school is subconscious and practical. And it can even be a mix of the two, a blend of the two. Now, an example of a practical influence is simply never doing well in languages or having a teacher we disliked. We're well aware of this influence. We leave high school with an impression of ourselves as learners, a measure of ourselves as learners, and a distaste for that particular subject. So this score we give ourselves as a human being, also reaches into other facets of our person, such as our perceived attractiveness, or our skill at socializing, and our popularity as people. How many adults have I heard say, I was never attractive, I was always the shy one, as if high school was the measure of all things. The practical side of the experience can easily turn into something subconscious, in the same way that a phobia operates. Our being accepts this idea, this measure, this score that we earned in high school, as people, as learners, as many things. In moments of introspection, many adults will start their sentence with, I was never fill in the blank in high school. I was never the one, the popular one. That does happen. As if we were somehow at our purest and most honest self, and that high school acted as a sort of irreversible measure for our future life as adults. It's absolutely extraordinary. As if to say, high school looked into my core being, I passed the trials, and this is who I am. I came into high school pure, they observed me, tabula rasa, okay, this is what you are, this is your measure of attractiveness, of cleverness, of inventiveness. So you're a bad speller, you're a bad public speaker, you're not good at making friends, you're not popular with the boys, with the girls, with the teachers even, you'll never be this, you'll never be that, as if really it meant anything at all. And I was surprised, and I'm speaking about several years of experience, how for many adults high school still means something, and they leave with this sort of stamp, this measure of their value that they carry into later life. It's quite striking. The fact is that the measure of our academic performance in school is a score we achieve on paper. It's just a score on a sheet of paper. It never takes into account the psychological factors surrounding school, such as the atmosphere, the other pupils, overcoming personal hardships. That's not on your score sheet, is it? Overcoming personal hardships. The daily repetition of undefined cyclic actions, which also can contribute to a lack of performance, and the uninspiring factory-like buildings. So that there are many factors that come into school. Schools do look like factories, at least in Europe they do. We don't have tennis courts and football fields and all that like they have in the States. It's dreary, it's horrible, it's grey, it's no fun at all. It's cubic boxes. Kids pile in to a box and sit there for 8 hours, day in, day out, don't have a clue what they're doing, what it's leading to, they just go. But all this contributes to your performance in school, so it's not a real measure of your person, it's a measure of your reaction to that environment, if it's worth anything at all. Surely, at least partially, not entirely, but at least partially, the atmosphere in your school, your own family situation, your own personal situation can influence your results in school. Surely. Doesn't say that on your score sheet or your report card or your... The physical school places itself outside of the debate as an influence on our performance. That's quite amazing, and I include university with that also. So the physical school places it outside of the debate as an influence on our performance, always has, partly due to the unquantifiable nature of this influence. How do you put a number to it? But also as a sort of contract that imposes itself on the participants. There is a contract that you've signed up for implicitly, and that involves all the participants, and it imposes itself on the participants also. And it's as if they were saying, listen, we know school is not perfect, but this is what you're getting, this is the deal. End of discussion. Even the participants themselves find it hard to forgive themselves for their poor performance in school. It seems that the only way to break the spell is to meet academic success at a later age in a different context in order to fully prove to ourselves that school was at fault and not us. Until then, a sense of unease usually endures when facing the challenge of learning at a later age. And I was lucky enough in my 30s, I'd always done poorly in school. Awful learner. And my parents still today think it's a miracle I even graduated at all. I was awful at it. I failed 2 years, so I graduated 2 years late. I almost failed every other year because I simply didn't like it and it wasn't adapted to me, and it was a one-size-fits-all, and it was a small school, and it was dreary, and there was only 400 pupils, and it was just uninteresting. I didn't like it at all. And two of my best friends who are actually, this is a story in itself. And so I did very poorly in school, quit school, 15 years, went back to university. I had a chance, I had a special funding to go back to university at age 34. Do you know what I did after 15 years out of high school with a very bad self-image of myself as a learner? I graduated with bloody distinction. Do you know, I studied linguistics, literature and German. I was also learning a foreign language. There were no classes on German. I taught myself German. 34, stepped onto the campus, no method, no nothing, no self-belief, thinking, listen Chris, try to succeed at one exam. If you can do one exam, if you can do one university exam, you'll be proud of yourself for life. I almost want to cry. But it was true, that was my frame of mind. It's September now, at Christmas is your first exam session. Do one exam, one. Prove to yourself you can pass one university exam. It's a true story. I graduated with distinction. And I did my bachelor's with distinction, then my master's with distinction, then my PGCE, postgraduate certificate in education with distinction, and then I went on to do 3 TEFL certificates, which arguably are not worth much, but it's still something. And I think I did, I forget, I've done all sorts of things, but did I do a little digital marketing thing? I think I did a digital marketing diploma and maybe a special education one. I've lost 2 of them, I think. But all this to say that school was wrong, or maybe I was acting wrongly in school, whatever. It wasn't my true worth, it wasn't my true value as a learner, and I proved that to myself at age 34, that it wasn't true. Right, let's move on. Let's talk now about a few subconscious factors. The subconscious ideas that school places in spite of itself, they're not doing it on purpose, the ideas that they plant in our minds in spite of itself are at the same time very visible and quite well hidden. It's a bit of the two. It's a case of not seeing the wood for the trees, in a sense. It's very visible but well hidden also. Now, the first is the glaring contradiction between school being measured in years while at the same time leading to very uncertain results. It takes years. School is spread out for over 10 years, more even. 16 probably, 15, I don't know. Kindergarten, 6 years of primary, it's okay, 12, 15 maybe, roughly, if you include kindergarten. Years of maths, geography, chemistry classes still don't make pupils experts in those fields. A pupil might take the highest level of foreign languages available on the curriculum and still not be able to converse with ease in French or Spanish. Instead of questioning this, there is usually an acceptance. The subconscious conclusion we draw from this experience is that learning anything is hard and takes a long time. It's a subconscious thing we take in, we accept. Proof being that you can study 10 years of maths in school while still not being able to deliver an impromptu lecture on maths to your parents. Your parents can't say, "Hey Bob, right, you've been doing 6 years of maths now. Tell us about maths. How does it work? Tell us anything about maths. Come on, give us a little impromptu lecture." "I can't do maths. I don't know, we do it in school. I don't know, I've forgotten." "Well, tell us about geography then. Come on, you've been doing 6 years of geography. You're an expert by now." They can't. They can't. It's funny, isn't it? Unless I'm mistaken, unless your children can do it, for which I congratulate you, I honestly do, but I think it's a very small minority. I really do congratulate you if your children are capable of doing that. Now, in languages, this is exactly the same phenomenon. We conclude that we were taught by the best. Well, what else are you supposed to believe? So we go to high school, we conclude that we were taught by the best, the most qualified, and that years were still not sufficient to reach that fluent level. Therefore, languages, as a consequence, must surely be hard and necessarily acquired after many years of work. What else are you supposed to believe? You went to the best, it was run by the state, you were taught by the most qualified people, and you still didn't speak a language after several years. Well, the logical conclusion is that it takes years to learn a language and it's very hard. What else can you believe? Another subconscious belief that we develop in high school, or school in general, is that knowledge and learning is best done in a specialized context. I believe that to be a subconscious factor of influence. And I think that here the figure of Martin Luther, the translator of the Bible into ordinary German, and figurehead, of course, of the Protestant Reform, should remind us of similar happenings in history. Why should the Bible only be interpreted by specialists who know Latin? He questions. You remember what Martin Luther did? At the time there was this mysticism going on. It was all very shady. It was all in the magical language of Latin that no one spoke, and if any of you are historians well versed in this matter, please do correct me, but I believe that one of his big achievements was saying, well, no, I think everyone should have access to the Bible in ordinary language. That's what I believe Martin Luther did, and it's the same thing that we develop in school. It's almost as if school was still using Latin. Learning is scary. It has to be done by specialists in a specialist context. You can't do it on your own. You can't take the learning and do it on your own. I'm not qualified. I don't know what to do. And I think that school plants that belief in the minds of people. Please disagree if you want. The third subconscious factor can be found in the person of the teacher, who often acts as the guardian of knowledge, and that drove me up the wall at university. That teacher sets the pace of the learning according to their clock or calendar. As a leader of the knowledge, I'm talking about the teacher, the pupils invariably fall into the roles of followers or spectators. One has the knowledge, the others do not. They overly develop caution at the thought of appropriating the knowledge. Pupils don't do that. They wait for the knowledge to be given to them. And these are all little subconscious factors that have a huge influence on our attitudes as learners. I mentioned that I particularly hated that at university. I thought, what's the point in this? I went to, 6 years at university. I'm thinking, here we are, sitting in these lecture halls, writing down everything the teacher said, which they developed the figure of the tap. They became like little taps, little faucets of knowledge, Lecture starts, okay, open the tap, knowledge comes out, close the tap, see you next week. I'm thinking, well, can't you just give me all the knowledge and I'll learn it at home at 9 o'clock in the morning instead of waiting for a 2 p.m. lecture. Give me the knowledge, I'll do it alone, see you at the exam, I don't need you. But you couldn't do that. They were the guardians of knowledge, and you were meant to adapt to their calendar and their clock. The teacher is the guardian of knowledge. Doesn't have to be this way, but I think we're conditioned to a certain extent. Now, the fourth factor of influence that I'd like to speak about is being trained to fear the wrong answer, and that's a very, very big thing in school, of which we should all be aware. Now, school doesn't usually reward creativity or finding alternative solutions to a problem. When learners later choose a language school, as adults, I think it will be done based on what seems familiar to them. Does it look like a high school? Is it too distant from a high school? You want to recognize what you're familiar with already, and how right or wrong they might be when making that decision. And I think a lot of people are, in a sense, afraid of not choosing the right high school, the right language school, in case they make a mistake, because we have been trained for at least 12 years to fear right from wrong. Don't choose wrong, choose right. There's only two options in school anyway. So we look at other people's reviews or opinions on the internet, and the cycle continues, and we think, well, I'm terrified at the idea of making a mistake because I was trained not to make mistakes. That's what we do in high school. We train people not to make mistakes. which is absolutely idiotic, by the way, because as we know, any meaningful invention or progress within history, any meaningful step forward in any field in history was done through trial and error. Error is absolutely something to embrace. You must do errors if you want to progress in anything. And I'm just repeating the words of people infinitely more wise than myself. It's a fact. But we are trained in high school, be afraid of the wrong answer, of the wrong choice. Next thing I'd like to talk about is, the practical consequences I like to speak about. I think, it's an opinion, please correct me, I think the consequences of high school on language learning are plainly visible to who is paying attention. My very first job teaching French in a language school showed me all I had to know within an hour. It was just in front of me. I thought, this is high school all over again. I'll quickly tell you what it was like. It was in England, in a brick and mortar school, language school. What happened was I prepared the classroom. The students sat opposite me. We're talking about adult learners. The students sat opposite me in a class just as they did in school. They assumed the role of those who would be led and taught. It's an attitude. They never came with questions or references to their own independent learning. Never, never, never. Their trust in me was complete. And just as in school, they didn't project into the future. That's quite an interesting point, I find. The class was it was Groundhog Day sort of thing, which essentially what high school is. It's Groundhog Day every day. You don't quite know what you did yesterday or what you'll be doing 2 weeks from now. You just attend the present moment. That's what you do in high school. The class was now almost as if designed to satisfy the present moment without looking at the end goal. Going to class was the thing. It wasn't, okay, well, I've researched this, so where do you think I can get in terms of knowing French 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now? There wasn't a plan. It was stuck in the present moment. It was just high school all over again. For example, let's talk about high school. A geography class in high school doesn't entertain the discussion of where the knowledge might lead to, nor of its future use. The class of today is a self-contained moment that builds on the previous class and leads towards an exam or test. Now, how this test fits into the larger science of geography and how we might use this knowledge is not usually discussed. Pupils don't know how much they know, or even if their knowledge has any true value. I shouldn't laugh. Multiply this by as many subjects as there are, times the number of years, and schooling takes on a completely different face. So what I'm saying is, you go to geography class, you don't know what it's leading to, you don't know what it's worth, you don't know what you can do with this knowledge, and you don't know anything about this skill that you're acquiring today and what you'll be doing with it in the future. It's just a self-contained moment that exists today. In stark opposition to this mental training is the real-life necessity to be able to visualize in order to achieve our projects in a real world. I find this quite striking. All high school is blocked in the sort of present moment, but the skills you actually need after high school are precisely the ability to visualize to achieve your projects. You have to have a vision. Kids are not trained to do that. The slightest idea first takes form in the mind. Obviously it does, that's the way the human mind functions. If you want to build a table or a shelf or something, well, you picture the shelf, you imagine it, it takes form in your minds before it takes physical shape, right? And then you work out the steps. So the slightest idea first takes form in the mind before being put into actionable steps. That's what happens in the real world. Now, how odd that school chooses not to encourage such visualization. That is almost scary, isn't it? Now, I am aware that kids sometimes do projects, science projects and all that, but I also do believe it's a minority. It's not a meaningful part of the curriculum. And there is, of course, a project-based teaching and all that. I'm aware of that, but I don't think it actually defines high school. I don't think that's what high school is. It's largely just frozen in the present moment, if you will. Now, the limitations of the self when learning a language as an adult can usually be found in a conditioning that gives the learner a measure of what is possible. It's a big subconscious factor. So who would believe in learning a language in 6 months if school couldn't do it in 6 years? And if you think about this, I think it's absolutely true, because we always measure our ability to what we experienced before. Why would you believe that you can learn a language in 6 months if school couldn't do it in 6 years? And there is a degree of conditioning, and I'm aware that this word conditioning has a disagreeable connotation. It's not a completely neutral. It's a tainted word. It's not completely neutral, but I don't mean it in any negative sense of the word. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or that there's social conditioning. I'm not even touching that. I don't believe it's true. I think it's just a side effect of high school that in a sense can't be helped. The unclear purpose of school over a period of 10 years leaves students with a necessarily biased notion of the best practices when it comes to education. The refusal of the education institutions to admit to their babysitting role, because let's be frank, this is in large part what they're doing. The parents go off to work, the age of majority is 18. What do you do with the kids? They can't stay home, they can't go down chimneys or work in the fields. Well, you have to babysit them, you have to keep them safe. And we can't just have them play marbles or tennis. Well, let's do a higher level of babysitting. Let's call it academic babysitting, right? There is a refusal of the education institutions to admit to their babysitting role, I think, for fear of diluting their mission. And this, because it would be less honourable, it would be more, we take it less seriously. And school takes itself very seriously. It's all about education and learning and all that. Have you ever heard school and even address this? That they have a secondary mission, which is just to keep the kids busy while the parents work. I'm not being all rebellious in it, but it's a fact. We all know it. They never speak about it. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy, but perhaps it's worth talking about, because it does have an impact on our future self-appreciation as learners later on. So this refusal to admit to this role, I think, further distorts our understanding of learning. And what I mean by that is we draw the conclusion that we were at the best. We experienced the best the state had to offer. It wasn't babysitting, of course not. It was learning all the time. We went to the best. But then in simple words, if they'd say, listen, we're doing what we can. It's not great. We're keeping the kids busy. We're teaching them a few things here and there. Please, don't take it too seriously. Come on. They don't do that. On the contrary, they do say, take us very seriously. This is your measure as a human being for the rest of your life. Take us very seriously. We are school. No messing around. So in clear terms, students don't experience the best, quote unquote, that we could have put to their disposal. Of course not. They do not experience the best that we could have put at their disposal. As a society, it's not the absolute best that we could have come up with. Come on. So by design, school is purposed to be spread out until pupils reach the age of 18. It's designed to be spread out. Now, if the age of majority was younger, so too would school be shorter. It's completely random. Just what you do until the kid's older than 18. Until then, state education organises schooling according to the calendar, the parent schedules, and the age of legal majority. These are the three main forces that organise school: the academic calendar, the parent schedules, and the age of majority, It doesn't do it the other way around. So it doesn't first start with the targets and then fit it into the time we have. It doesn't say, well, it would be nice if our students developed fluency in French within 4 years. So it's the other way around. It's like, we have 4 years where we need to keep these kids busy. Let's throw some French in here. And in a sense, where they get to with their level of French is not so important than being kept busy for 4 years. Now, if you don't believe me, I'm not saying that the teachers don't have a heart and that they're not trying their hardest and all that. But we are not first starting with the mission, and that is contrary to what you would do in the real world. You'd say, okay, what's the target? What's the mission? You want to teach French? Okay, well, what do you want to do with that? Where do you want the kids to get to in terms of level? I don't believe that they've set the target of a certain level they want a student to reach in French and said, this is the means we need to put at their disposal in order to meet this goal. It's not the way it works. It's first the calendar. Let's look at the calendar. How can we fill it in? And I would say the same thing about university. It's exactly the same thing. So as most things in life, it's the calendar that we've adopted as a society that acts as the organizational force in school rather than the mission it pursues. It's the calendar that determines everything. A school is purposed to be spread out until pupils reach the age of 18. If the age of majority was younger, we said already, school would be shorter, and the same could be said of college degrees that follow the academic calendar. And I'll go a bit, I'll leave the article here for a second, but it's the second thing that drove me mad at university. I thought, why am I giving up 5-6 years of my life? Because to earn a degree, it's completely random. It's all based on the calendar, and that's there's no clear solution out of it. But if you think about it, the whole organizational force of our society is the calendar. January, February, March, April, summer holidays. Why am I giving up 5 or 6 years of my life to earn a degree when I could have done it in 2 years? Because if you think about it, university, college, at least as I experienced it, is like a concertina. So it's at either side, there are very intense periods of exams, but in the meantime, you're just sitting and nodding and sitting in lecture halls and saying, oh yeah, that was good, yeah, okay, right, listening to a teacher speak. But you still don't remember it, you still don't process it. Because the day you get to the exam, they're not saying, did you agree with what you heard during the lectures? Was it interesting? They don't care about that. They want you to reproduce, to give back the information as it was in the textbook, and to possibly even justify a point of view. So they'll say, well, I don't know, at random, what were the 4 factors that contributed to the, I don't know, Industrial Revolution and the development of cities in the UK in the 1800s or something? What were the 4 factors? So that's not a question that you answer by saying, oh yeah, you mentioned that, yeah, that was super interesting, yeah, I was there at the lecture, yeah, very interesting. No, they want to know factually what the 4 points were. How do you learn that? By studying. You don't learn that by going to the lectures. The lectures don't give you a diploma, it's the studying and it's the passing of the exam. So why is it that 98% of your time you're doing nothing and only 2% of your time you're actually studying? And this is why I say, well, give me the learning material now. I'll start tomorrow. In 2 years I'll expedite this diploma already. I don't have time to waste, and this is what we do on We Communicate, by the way. This is why we don't do regular bookings or waste your time and go to classes every week. Hi Chris, how have you been? Oh, it's been 7 days already, has it? So how are you? Been doing any work? No? Okay, gosh, shall we? Okay. We were on the past tense. Okay, remember what that is? No, not really. I would be, it doesn't work. It never has worked. Not for We Communicate, not for universities, not for Harvard. I don't care who you are. It's not worked. It's biased. It's flawed. Sorry, not biased. It's flawed. It doesn't work. And you had to change it. We had to change it. And I changed it on my own small level. Didn't want to play that game anymore. Right, to conclude on high school, when I think of the work I do as a French tutor, as a French instructor, I would find it a very tall challenge to pass on French to a satisfactory level while working in a school context. So if I stepped into a school, imagine the situation, that, hi Chris, these are the buildings we have, this is the class, these are the pupils, teach them French, yeah? I'd generally be asking, what do you expect? What do you expect me to do realistically? Why? Well, groups of 20 to 25 pupils, many of which are there against their will. Early morning start, French classes sandwiched between other classes, limited possibilities for conversational phonetics. Taking the UK as an example, students have as little as 1 to 2 hours of foreign languages weekly. There are literally 30 hours of school between each Spanish or French class, plus weekends, to forget what you saw since last class. What do you realistically hope to achieve? And I will be making a video that will be called The Upside of the Teacher Shortage in MFL Teachers in the UK. Is there an upside to the MFL teacher shortage in the UK? I'll be making a video on that. What realistically do you hope to achieve? Okay, twice a week, okay, 30 hours plus weekends to forget about all we learned, and you want them to learn what? French? Okay, right. Pigs might fly. Now, the USA does it slightly better with 5 hours, according to the internet, what I found on the internet, of foreign languages per week, depending on the district. up to 5 hours a week. Now, as for the success of this more voluminous program, if anyone has ever heard a non-Hispanic American speak Spanish fluently, please raise your hands, please. There are some, I know there are, the word is some. What I'm getting at is, and I think I'm arguing by means of, I don't know, life experience, common sense. I'm not trying to slip in a flawed argument here, but 5 hours of Spanish a week, how many of them speak Spanish fluently? So even 5 hours, I don't think actually works, even if you take 5 hours of Spanish. And I've actually do classes with a young girl here who goes to a very, very good high school in an upscale neighborhood. And she tells me about her Spanish classes, which she's been doing for a number of years. I got her French level up to Spanish easily, just a few private classes with me. Her French easily got better than a Spanish level. And she'd been doing Spanish for years. And then she told me about the whole, I don't know if I'll mention this, the whole seal of biliteracy scam thing, where they reward everyone with the little seal of biliteracy. She told me that some of them in my class don't even know anything about Spanish, still get a medal. Anyway, I'm talking without any proof. It's just hearsay. But I don't know why, but I want to believe it. So my very genuine question to anyone tasking me with teaching French in a high school, in the sense that I mean teaching French, would be, what do you realistically wish to accomplish? What outcome are you targeting? How many hours a week? Okay, what are we doing? So where do you wish to get to? For all these reasons that I've mentioned, I think it's regrettable that high school has appointed itself the role of being the introduction to foreign languages to so many learners across the world, while staying silent on the level that a pupil may realistically achieve. And I actually asked this pupil, who was very keen on Spanish, on learning Spanish, and I asked her, where do you expect to get with your Spanish class this year? What's the level you're aiming at? No clue. Never even considered the question. It was never spoken of. You just do Spanish. It's blocked in the present moment. It belongs to the present moment. Now, maybe the teachers have a clue of where the class is leading to. I don't know. And even if they do, why don't they share this information with students? Why don't they prepare students to make up a plan, a target, to think in terms of targets? Why are they just being led in the present moment from one class to another? Feel free to react. I think it's partly true. This part of the conversation that I just referred to is not only never asked by the students, but it's also never volunteered by the school. To the student, it's called a foreign language class that's stuck in the present moment and repeated every week. It falls within a larger non-existent conversation on the true purpose of any of the classes on the curriculum. So it's not just languages, it's the whole curriculum. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's engage in a bit of meta-discourse. What are we doing day in, day out? And where are we going with this? And what is it leading to? Now, of course, there are answers. And I believe that the philosophical answers and maybe the legal answers are clearer than the actual academic answers. I know this side of the answers, why it's necessary to have school and compulsory education, all that. But the academic side is not really clear, and the real life skills side is certainly not clear at all. It's more, I think, legal advantages and even philosophical advantages. I think schools everywhere enjoy a role as a sort of undisputed authority on the subjects it teaches, while avoiding to put into simple words any of its outcomes. It's sort of the undisputed champion, this is who we are. And it never entertains the question of how good at geography or at Spanish will I get if I take this course for 4 years. No parent, I think, asks that. So it doesn't reproduce the real world in a sense. No parent signs up their kid at a school and says, okay, that course there looks good. History, okay. How much will my kid know about history? What's the true competence they'll achieve after this 3 or 4 years? You don't have that discussion. I think it's important to take a step back on school to see it for what it is and to think about what you're doing day in, day out, and how it works, and what are the forces at play. These parents and pupils might genuinely believe that 4 years of French or Spanish are barely enough to crack low conversation level, while at the same time never hearing that schools were not equipped to bring better results. And that's not fair, is it? Because schools will never say, listen, we're not equipped to give you any more. You've taken 4 years of Spanish. It was largely determined by the academic calendar. Sorry, we couldn't do much more for you. This is what you're getting. They don't say that. There's this belief that you are getting the best. I think that the feeling of incompetence for languages that adults have, multiplied by as many subconscious conclusions as there are variables that make up a school, and the other subconscious conclusions were what? Your attractiveness, your worth as a human being, your abilities to socialize, to be funny, to be, I don't know, self-assured, athletic, name them. All these variables, all these subconscious conclusions, I think it gives us adult learners who not only don't believe in their ability as people, as learners, but also were never taught to believe. Is there a class on self-belief anywhere in school? You're taught what? To fear right from wrong. You are taught that, very well so, and I think it's a crying shame. Now, because this video is very long, what I will do is, I'll thank you for listening. I look forward to any comments. I know it's an hour long, 60 minutes. I didn't think it would be this long. You can find the full article on the website. This is not a dig at state education. I'm a qualified teacher. I believe I know a thing or two about high school, about the history of education and such matters. Let's have a conversation. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Chris from We Communicate. Goodbye.